You are now listening to When a Billionaire Craves, but only on his terms. A full billionaire romance audiobook. Lena Carter never believed in fairy tales, especially not the kind where a brooding billionaire sweeps a girl off her feet. She was too busy juggling law school, a demanding job, and a mountain of debt to entertain such fantasies. But when a late-night legal assignment sends her straight into the world of Damian Wolfe, the enigmatic billionaire known for his ruthless business tactics and even colder heart, her life takes a turn she never saw coming. Damian doesn't do emotion, he doesn't do attachments, and he certainly doesn't do love. But from the moment Lena walks into his office, challenging him in ways no one ever has, he knows he wants her on his terms. 1 year, no questions, no feelings, just an arrangement that benefits them both. At first, Lena refuses, but when her mother's medical bills spiral out of control, she finds herself signing a contract with the devil himself, a contract that binds her to Damian in ways far beyond the fine print. Yet the deeper she falls into his world of power, luxury, and seduction, the more she realizes she's merely a piece in a dangerous game, a game where love was never meant to be an option. And when the truth about Damian's past comes to light, Lena is forced to ask herself, is she willing to fight for a man who refuses to be saved? Or will she walk away before she loses herself completely? One rule, one contract, 1 year. But what happens when breaking the rules is the only way to survive? Chapter 1. Lena Carter hurried down the marble hallway of Wolfe Enterprises, her heels clicking against the pristine floor. She clutched her leather portfolio to her chest, her fingers tightening around the edges as her nerves twisted into knots. This wasn't supposed to be her job. She was just a paralegal at the firm, one of dozens who worked behind the scenes. But a last-minute crisis had forced her boss to send her instead. Just hand him the contract, get his signature, and leave, she muttered under her breath, rehearsing the plan for the 100th time. It should have been simple, a straightforward delivery to one of the most powerful men in New York. But nothing about Damian Wolfe was simple. Everyone at the law firm spoke of him with a mix of awe and fear. Ruthless, calculating, dangerously intelligent. A man who played chess while the rest of the world fumbled with checkers. Lena had never met him before, but she had read about him, the billionaire with an empire spanning finance, real estate, and technology. A man who never lost a deal, never let his guard down, and never let anyone close enough to see the cracks beneath his perfect, polished exterior. She took a deep breath as she stopped outside the double doors of his office. The secretary, an older woman with sharp eyes, barely glanced up. "He's expecting you. Go in." Lena swallowed. No turning back now. Pushing the heavy door open, she stepped inside and felt an immediate shift in the air. The room was enormous, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering Manhattan skyline. But it was the man behind the desk who stole the breath from her lungs. Damian Wolfe sat in a high-backed chair, his sharp blue eyes lifting from his laptop screen to settle on her with quiet, assessing intensity. He was absurdly handsome in the most lethal way possible. Chiseled features, tools, dark hair, and a presence so commanding it made the air feel electric. His suit, a custom black Tom Ford, fit his powerful frame like a second skin. Lena's throat went dry. Now she understood why people called him dangerous. "You're not David Sinclair?" His voice was smooth but edged with steel, cutting straight through the silence. "No," Lena said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Mr. Sinclair had an emergency. He sent me instead." Damian leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "And you are?" "Lena Carter," she said, clearing her throat. "I'm a paralegal at Sinclair and Moore." Something flickered in his eyes, something she couldn't quite read. He studied her for a beat too long before gesturing toward the portfolio in her hands. "I assume that's the contract?" "Yeah." She stepped forward and placed it on his desk, resisting the urge to wipe her damp palms against her skirt. "It just needs your signature." Damian didn't open the folder. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, watching her with a kind of quiet amusement that made her stomach tight. "How long have you worked for Sinclair?" Lena blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Almost a year." Impressive. "And yet they sent you to handle something this important." The implication was clear. He didn't think she was qualified to be here. Lena lifted her chin. "I was the only one available on short notice." "And you agreed?" "I didn't have a choice." His lips curved just slightly. Something about her answer pleased him. Damian finally opened the folder, scanning the pages with the precision of a man who missed nothing. Lena stood still, forcing herself to ignore how ridiculously good he smelled, like expensive cologne and danger wrapped in a three-piece suit. She should have been relieved when he reached for his pen, ready to sign. But instead of scrawling his name at the bottom of the page, he set the pen down and looked at her again. "You're interesting." Lena's brows shot up. "Excuse me? You're different from the people who usually walk into this office." She wasn't sure whether that was a compliment or an insult. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all." He closed the folder and steepled his fingers. "I like interesting." Lena's pulse kicked up, but she kept her expression neutral. What the hell was he getting at? Damian exhaled softly, as if he had just made a decision. Then he said something that turned her world upside down. "I have an offer for you." Lena frowned. "An offer?" His eyes darkened. 1-year contract. Exclusive. Her stomach dropped. Did she hear him correctly? "I don't understand." Damian leaned forward slightly, his presence overwhelming. "You're smart, confident, and you don't bore me. That's rare." His gaze flickered to her lips before meeting her eyes again. "I need someone by my side. Someone I can trust." "It wouldn't be personal, strictly business." Lena's mind reeled. "You're talking about a relationship, a mutually beneficial arrangement." Damian corrected smoothly. "For 1 year, no emotions, no complications." Lena took a step back, as if distance could make this conversation any less surreal. "You barely know me." "I know enough." His voice was dangerously calm. "You need money, don't you?" Lena's breath caught. How did he know that? He tapped the contract. "I did my research before signing this deal. You have student loans, medical expenses for your mother, and a job that barely covers it all." Her chest tightened. He knew. "I can fix that," Damian continued, his voice smooth as silk. 1 year with me, and you'd never have to worry about money again." Lena's heart pounded. This was insane. What exactly would this arrangement include? She asked, forcing herself to stay logical. "Public appearances, travel, dinners. You'd be seen as my companion, but there would be no expectations beyond that." His lips curved slightly. "Unless you wanted there to be." Heat flushed her skin. "And if I say no?" He shrugged. "Then we sign this contract, and you walk out of this office, as if this conversation never happened." She stared at him, searching for some sign that this was a joke. But Damian Wolfe wasn't the type to joke. Lena's mind spun. This was madness. A billionaire offering her a contract for an exclusive relationship. It sounded like something out of a bad romance novel, and yet her mother's hospital bills were piling up. Her student loans felt like a noose around her neck, and she was working herself to the bone just to stay afloat. This deal could change everything. She swallowed hard. "I need time to think." Damian nodded, as if he expected that answer. "You have 24 hours. Lena inhaled sharply. "That's not much time. I don't believe in hesitation." His gaze locked onto hers. "Either you want this or you don't." Her pulse thundered in her ears. 1 year, 1 contract, 1 deal with the devil himself. And for the first time in her life, Lena wasn't sure what she would choose. Chapter 2. Lena stared at the contract sitting before her, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the pen. The words blurred together, a mere collection of ink on paper, yet a decision that would change everything. 24 hours. That was all Damian Wolfe had given her. She had spent the entire night tossing and turning, weighing her options, trying to convince herself that signing this contract didn't mean selling her soul. But the truth was brutally simple. She needed this. Her mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves. Her part-time job at the law firm barely covered rent, let alone her growing student loans. And as much as she hated to admit it, Damian was right. 1 year in his world, and she'd never have to worry about money again. Now sitting across from him in his office, she could feel his piercing gaze studying her, waiting. Are you having second thoughts, Miss Carter? His voice was as smooth as silk, but there was an edge to it, a quiet challenge. Lena exhaled, gripping the pen tighter. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust this arrangement. But what choice did she have? No. Her voice was steady. I just want to be clear about the terms. A ghost of a smirk touched his lips, but it didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. Everything is outlined in the contract, but if you have questions, ask them now. She hesitated. No emotions, no expectations beyond what's agreed upon. That's correct. No romantic obligations, Damian replied, amusement flickering beneath his otherwise unreadable expression. I don't mix business with unnecessary complications. Lena swallowed. Complications, that's all emotions were to him. An inconvenience. She looked down at the paper, inhaled sharply, and signed her name. It was Damian took the contract, scanning her signature, then placed it inside his desk drawer. Just like that, she belonged to him for a year. I'll have my driver pick you up this evening, he said, standing. You'll move into my penthouse. Lena stiffened. Tonight? There's no reason to wait. His gaze met hers. You agreed to this, Miss Carter. Welcome to my world. The penthouse was more than Lena had expected. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a breathtaking space. A vast, open-concept living area, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The furniture was sleek, modern, and ridiculously expensive, with dark leather couches, polished marble floors, and minimalist decor that screamed money and control. Her suitcases had already been brought in, placed neatly in what she assumed was her designated room. Your space is down the hall, Damian's voice broke the silence, as he walked past her, removing his suit jacket. There are rules, Lena. I expect them to be followed. Lena turned, crossing her arms. You mean besides the ones in the contract? His lips curved slightly, but there was no warmth. Yes, no unannounced guests, no discussing our arrangement with anyone. And while you may live here, this is my home. You'll respect my space. Lena clenched her jaw. He may have control, but she wasn't going to be one of his chess pieces. Anything else, Your Highness? She quipped, arching a brow. For the first time, Damian's lips twitched, as if he wanted to smile but refused to allow himself. You'll find out soon enough, he murmured, before disappearing down the hall. Lena exhaled slowly. What had she just gotten herself into? The first event. The moment Lena stepped out of the limousine, cameras flashed like wildfire, blinding and relentless. She fought the instinct to shrink away, forcing herself to lift her chin, to act as if she belonged. Damian's hand rested lightly on the small of her back as they walked into the grand ballroom, an extravagant charity gala filled with New York's elite powerful businessmen, celebrities, politicians, people who lived in a world completely different from hers. Smile, Damian murmured beside her. You're on display now. Lena turned to him, biting back a retort. Of course, this wasn't just an event. It was a test. The room was dripping with wealth, crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed tables, live classical music playing softly in the background. But it wasn't the opulence that unsettled her. It was the people. They stared, whispered. Who is she? Why is Damian Wolfe with her? Where did she come from? Lena forced herself to ignore the murmurs, instead focusing on the man beside her. Damian looked unaffected, cool, unreadable, perfectly in control. Drink? He asked, already signaling a waiter. She nodded, accepting the champagne flute, her fingers brushing his as she took it. A simple touch, yet it sent an unexpected jolt through her. Damian's gaze flickered to her for a brief second, as if he felt it too. But then, as quickly as it came, the moment was gone. A tall blonde woman approached, her lips curving into a knowing smirk. Damian, I didn't expect to see you here with company. Lena instantly disliked her. Charlotte, Damian greeted smoothly, his tone neutral. Enjoying the gala? She barely acknowledged his words, her sharp gaze flicking to Lena. And you are? Lena lifted her glass, mirroring the woman's poised expression. Lena Carter. Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eye. Interesting. And how exactly do you fit into Damian's world? Lena knew what she was asking. Are you just another one of his conquests? She didn't get the chance to respond, because Damian spoke first. Lena is with me, he said, his voice cool and undeniably possessive. Charlotte arched a brow. Is that so? Before Damian could reply, another man approached, tall, charismatic, and exuding the kind of power that didn't need to be flaunted. Damian, the man greeted. I see you've brought a guest tonight. Lena turned to him, meeting sharp green eyes filled with curiosity. Tristan Hayes. He introduced himself smoothly, extending a hand. And you are? Lena Carter, she said, shaking his hand. His fingers lingered just a little too long before releasing her. Damian's jaw tightened. Lena is off limits. Tristan, he said flatly. Tristan smirked. Is she? The tension crackled between them. Something unspoken. Something dangerous. Lena sipped her champagne, realizing she had just stepped into something far more complicated than she anticipated, and for the first time she wondered if she had just made a deal with the devil. Chapter 3. Damian Wolfe prided himself on control, unshakable, calculated, always 3 steps ahead. But Lena Carter was a disruption, an unpredictable storm he hadn't accounted for. It had been 3 weeks since she signed the contract. 3 weeks of sharing the same penthouse, attending high-profile events by his side, and testing the limits of his patience. She challenged him every glance, every sharp remark, every refusal to simply obey his unspoken rules. He wasn't used to defiance, and yet here he was, sitting across from her at the dining table, watching as she casually scrolled through her phone, entirely unimpressed by the 5-star meal prepared by his personal chef. Damian set down his glass. You barely touched your food. Lena didn't look up. Not really hungry. His jaw tightened. She was impossible. If you're going to play the part, you need to maintain appearances. She finally glanced at him, her brown eyes filled with something that always unsettled him. Intelligence, defiance, a silent challenge. You mean if I'm going to be your perfectly packaged accessory? She said coolly. I should at least eat the overpriced meal in front of me. Damian exhaled slowly, pressing his fingers together. You know that's not what I meant. Isn't tension stretched between them, unyielding, dangerous? Lena leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. I don't fit into your world, Damian. His eyes flickered with something unreadable. No, you don't. For a moment, Lena thought he was agreeing with her, that she truly didn't belong here among the billionaires and power players. But then he added, Yet you're here. Something about the way he said it, low, deliberate, sent an unexpected heat curling through her. She quickly pushed it away. I don't need you controlling every aspect of my life, she muttered, looking away. His gaze hardened. Then don't make it difficult. Lena's lips parted, ready to fire back, but the sound of Damian's phone vibrating interrupted them. He answered with a clipped, Wolf, yes, I'll be there. He ended the call and stood, already moving toward his study. Lena watched him, narrowing her eyes. What was that about? Damian glanced over his shoulder. We have another event tonight. Her stomach twisted. Another gala, another night of pretending. She exhaled. Fine. But she had no idea that tonight would change everything. The gala. Lena wasn't prepared for the sheer extravagance of the event, held in one of the most exclusive venues in the city. The gala was a parade of wealth, power, and carefully crafted deception. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed, voices murmured, and all eyes fell on them. Damian remained composed, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, guiding her inside, always in control, always untouchable. But Lena, she felt like an imposter. She wasn't like the other women here, elegant, poised, bred for this world. She was simply a lost student who had made a deal with the devil, and the devil was watching her every move. Relax, Damian murmured against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. Lena stiffened. I am relaxed. His lips twitched. Lying doesn't suit you. She bit the inside of her cheek, willing herself to stay calm. As they entered the grand hall, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, the room buzzing with the idle chatter of New York's elite. Damian led her to a private table where familiar faces awaited. Charlotte Sinclair, Tristan Hayes, a handful of other socialites, whose gazes flickered with curiosity and judgment. Charlotte's smile was sharp, calculated. Lena, how lovely to see you again. Lena forced a polite smile. Likewise. Charlotte's eyes glittered with amusement. Tell me, dear, how are you finding Damian's world? It must be quite the adjustment. Lena knew exactly what she was doing, baiting her. But Lena wasn't easily shaken. "Oh, it's been eye-opening," she said smoothly, lifting her champagne. "Turns out not everything in high society is as polished as it looks." Charlotte's lips twitched. "Is that so?" Damian, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Charlotte." Just her name, but it carried a warning. Charlotte's gaze flickered between them before she smiled. "Poisonous. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised," she murmured. Damian always did have a habit of picking up stray. The words hit their mark. A slow, condescending smirk played on Charlotte's lips as she watched Lena carefully, waiting for her to crack. Lena gripped her glass tighter, feeling like she was nothing more than a temporary fixture, an insignificant amusement. She felt the heat of embarrassment creep up her neck, but before she could speak, Damian did something she never expected. He placed his drink down with a sharp clink and leaned forward. "I must have missed the part where your opinion mattered, Charlotte." His voice was smooth, calm, but lethal. Charlotte's expression faltered. Damian's gaze was ice. "If I recall, the last time you tried to meddle in my affairs, it didn't end well for you." Silence. Tension coiled between them like a loaded gun. Charlotte laughed softly, but there was an edge of discomfort in it. "Well, Damian, you've always been full of surprises." He didn't reply, just picked up his drink and took a slow sip. And just like that, Charlotte Sinclair had been dismissed. Lena stared at him, heart pounding. He had defended her publicly, without hesitation. He was a man who never let emotions interfere. But tonight he had broken his own rule, and she didn't know what to do with that. The night that changed everything. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Damian sat beside her in the car, his expression unreadable, his fingers tapping absently against his thigh. Lena shifted, stealing a glance at him. "Why did you do that?" she finally asked. Damian didn't look at her. "Do what?" She clenched her jaw. "Defend me?" His fingers stilled. The air between them crackled with something unspoken. Finally he turned, his gaze locking onto hers. Unflinching, dark, intense. "She insulted you?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. "I don't allow that." Lena's breath caught. "You don't allow it?" Damian leaned closer, his presence overwhelming. "You're mine, Lena." The words sent a shiver down her spine. Not his possession, not his property, but something else. Something more dangerous. She swallowed. "This is just business, Damian." His gaze darkened. "Is it?" Lena exhaled sharply, forcing herself to look away. This wasn't part of the plan. She had agreed to the contract. She had agreed to the terms. But tonight the lines between business and pleasure had blurred, and neither of them knew how to stop it. Chapter 4. Lena had never been the kind of person who let things go easily, and Damian Wolfe was a mystery she couldn't ignore. He was a man of power, control, and impenetrable walls. Every time she thought she caught a glimpse of something real, something beneath the cold exterior, he shut down, retreating into the fortress he had built around himself. And after what happened at the gala, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he had defended her, the way his voice had dropped into something almost dangerous when he told her she was his. It should have meant nothing. It should have been just another part of the arrangement. But it didn't feel like nothing, and that scared her. Lena wasn't naive. She knew better than to think Damian had saved her out of kindness. Men like him didn't do things without reason. So what was it? What was he hiding? The late night encounter. It was well past midnight when Lena found herself wandering the penthouse. She couldn't sleep, not when her mind kept circling back to him. The city skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sea of golden lights shimmering in the distance. And then she saw him. Damian stood by the bar, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. He wasn't in his usual tailored suits, just a loose dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the top buttons undone, revealing the hint of a scar just below his collarbone. He looked different, less like the untouchable billionaire, more like a man carrying something heavy on his shoulders. Lena hesitated before stepping forward. Couldn't sleep either? Damian glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Didn't try. She leaned against the counter, watching as he swirled the amber liquid in his glass. There was something different about him tonight. You always drink alone? She asked. His lips twitched, but there was no humor in it. It's better that way. Lena tilted her head. Why? He took a slow sip, his gaze locked on the city beyond. Less chance of someone asking questions. She exhaled. Of course. Always guarded, always keeping people at a distance. You're exhausting. You know that, she murmured, crossing her arms. Damian finally looked at her, something flickering behind his dark eyes. Oh yes, she said firmly. You shut people out. You pretend like nothing touches you. But you're not as untouchable as you want people to think. He didn't respond, just stared at her with that intense, assessing gaze. And then, just for a moment, something cracked. His fingers tightened around the glass, his jaw clenching. Go to bed, Lena. His voice was low, a warning. But she didn't move. She could feel it. The shift, the weight of something unspoken, hanging between them. Damian, go. He turned away from her, downing the rest of his drink in a single swallow. Lena studied him for a long moment, before finally retreating. And as she walked away, she realized she had never heard her name from his lips quite like that before, like it meant something. Like she meant something. A name from the past. The next morning, Damian was gone before she woke up. Typical. She pushed away the lingering thoughts from the night before and focused on something else. Something that had been bothering her since the gala. Damian had enemies. He had allies. He had power. But what he didn't have was anyone truly close to him. Why? That question lingered in her mind as she wandered into his study. An expansive space lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, and a massive desk covered in neatly stacked documents. Lena wasn't exactly snooping, at least. That's what she told herself. But when she picked up a stack of business papers, a name slipped free from the pile. A single piece of paper. A name written in elegant, careful script. Celeste Vaughn. Lena frowned. She knew that name. She grabbed her phone, typing quickly, and the moment she saw the search results, her stomach dropped. Celeste Vaughn, socialite, former fiancé of Damian Wolfe. Lena's breath caught. She clicked on an article, her eyes scanning the words. The high-profile wedding between billionaire Damian Wolfe and socialite Celeste Vaughn was abruptly called off, just hours before the ceremony. Sources close to the couple claim Vaughn left Wolfe at the altar, disappearing without a trace. Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. This was it. This was the reason he never let anyone in. He had been left humiliated, betrayed, abandoned. She swallowed hard, setting the paper back where she found it. Now she understood why he always held people at arm's length. Why he never let emotion cloud his decisions. Because the last time he let someone close, she destroyed him, walking into a trap. That night, Damian returned late. Lena sat on the couch, waiting. He didn't acknowledge her at first, just loosened his tie, pouring himself another drink, like he always did. But she wasn't about to let this go. I know about Celeste, she said quietly. Damian's movement stilled for a long moment. He didn't turn, didn't speak. Then, slowly, deliberately, he set his glass down. When he finally faced her, his expression was cold, too cold. Is that so? Lena's heart pounded. He wasn't just guarded now, he was a fortress. She left you, she said quietly. At the altar, his jaw clenched. That was a long time ago, but it still haunts you. Silence. Something dark flickered in his gaze. A warning. You shouldn't dig into things that don't concern you. Lena stood, crossing the space between them. I think it does concern me. He let out a low, humorless chuckle. You're mistaken. She searched his face, frustration bubbling up. Why won't you talk about it? His gaze sharpened. Because it doesn't matter, doesn't it? She shot back. Is that why you keep everyone at a distance? Why you won't let anyone in? Damian stepped closer, too close. You think you figured me out? His voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous beneath it. Lena's pulse hammered. I think you're scared. A muscle in his jaw ticked. Of what? She swallowed. Of feeling something again. The words landed like a punch. His eyes darkened, his breath coming sharper. And then, without warning, he reached out, his fingers curling under her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Let me make something clear, Lena," he murmured. Her breath caught. "I don't do emotions," he said, his voice like steel. "I don't do second chances, and I sure as hell don't do love." Lena exhaled shakily. But instead of backing down, she held his gaze. "Maybe that's why you're so miserable." Damian's fingers tensed against her jaw. For a second she thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to, but instead, he released her, sudden and abrupt, like touching her burned him. And then, without another word, he walked away, leaving Lena standing there, heart pounding, and realizing maybe she was the one walking straight into a trap. Chapter 5. Lena had always sensed there was something off about this entire arrangement, but she never expected the truth to be so devastating. She stood frozen in Damian's office, her heart hammering as she stared at the document in her trembling hands. It was no accident. Their meeting, their marriage, none of it was coincidence. Damian Wolfe had orchestrated everything. Lena swallowed hard, her mind spinning as she read the details in front of her. A file filled with information about her life, her past, her foster mother. Every single thing about her that should have been private was laid bare. And at the bottom of the page, one name stood out. Victor Langston. Lena's breath caught. Victor, a man she barely knew, yet a name that had loomed in the shadows of her past. Her mother had always warned her about him, told her never to trust him, and now he was the connection, the reason Damian had chosen her. A sick feeling twisted in her stomach. It was never about her. It was about revenge. A cold hand gripped her chest as she stepped back, the file slipping from her fingers. How could he pretend? The late-night conversations, the way he had looked at her, the way he had made her believe, even for a second, that there was something real between them. It was all a lie. The sound of the office door opening jolted her from her thoughts. Damian stepped inside, his sharp gaze locking onto her immediately. His expression was unreadable, but Lena had spent enough time around him to know when he was calculating, and right now he was gauging her reaction. She clenched her fists. "How long were you going to keep this from me?" Damian exhaled slowly, closing the door behind him. "I see you've been digging." His voice was calm. "Look, come." Lena felt something inside her snap. "Don't act like this is nothing. You set me up. This whole thing," she gestured wildly, "was never about a business deal. It was about him." Damian didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned against the desk, watching her with that same maddening control. She gaped at him. "And you manipulated me. Lied to me." I thought. She stopped herself, shaking her head. What had she thought? That she mattered? That he cared? Damian's gaze darkened. "What exactly did you think, Lena?" Her stomach twisted. "That you weren't a complete bastard." Silence stretched between them. Then Damian moved. In a single stride, he was in front of her, invading her space, his presence suffocating. Lena refused to step back. His jaw tightened. "You think I lied to you?" His voice was low, controlled, but there was something dangerous beneath the surface. She scoffed. "You expect me to believe you didn't?" He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I didn't lie. I simply didn't tell you the full truth." Lena let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, well, that makes me feel so much better." Damian's gaze locked onto hers. "This marriage was never about love. You knew that from the beginning." Her chest tightened. "That doesn't mean you had the right to use me as a pawn in your little revenge game." His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smirk. "And yet here you are." Lena's nails dug into her palm. She wanted to slap him, wanted to hurt him the way he had just hurt her. Instead, she forced herself to breathe. If this was about Victor, why not go after him directly? She demanded. Damian's expression hardened. "Because he took something from me, and now I take something from him." Lena stilled. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer, and that scared her more than anything. She swallowed. "Is this about Celeste?" The second the name left her lips, something shifted. Damian's entire body tensed, his jaw locked, his eyes darkening with something cold and lethal. For the first time since she had met him, Lena saw something close to rage in his eyes. "You don't want to bring her into this," he said, his voice low, dangerous. Lena held her ground, Why? Because she left you. Because she humiliated you. Damian let out a slow, humorless chuckle. You think this is about humiliation? Lena hesitated. Isn't it? Damian stepped even closer, too close. His scent, expensive cologne, whiskey, and something purely him, invaded her senses. Then he spoke. She didn't just leave me, Lena. Lena's breath hitched. She destroyed me. The words sent a chill down her spine. Damian wasn't talking about heartbreak. He was talking about something much darker. Lena's voice wavered. What did she do? Damian exhaled through his nose, his hands balling into fists at his sides. Celeste didn't just leave me at the altar. She left with him. Lena's stomach dropped. Victor? Damian nodded once. They planned it together. She was never going to marry me. She was using me for information, for power, for everything my name could give her. Lena's mind, she had always known Damian was ruthless. But this wasn't just revenge. This was personal. Lena shook her head. So what, you marry me to get back at Victor, to punish him? Damian didn't blink. Yes, her chest ached. And me? What happens to me? A flicker of something almost unreadable crossed Damian's face. You agreed to the contract, he said. You belong to me for a year. Lena's blood ran cold. I don't belong to you. Damian tilted his head. Then leave. Her breath caught. Could she really walk away? She thought about her mother, about everything she had promised, about why she agreed to this in the first place. She clenched her jaw. You're a bastard. Damian smirked. And you're still here. Lena hated that he was right, because despite everything, she couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not until she figured out exactly what game Damian was playing, and whether or not she was ready to play too. Chapters. Lena was still reeling from the truth when the past came knocking. She had barely come to terms with Damian's deception, barely wrapped her mind around the fact that their marriage was nothing more than a weapon in his war against Victor, when she appeared Celeste Vaughn, the woman who had left Damian at the altar, the woman who had destroyed him, the woman who, for reasons Lena couldn't begin to understand, had come back. It happened on an evening like any other, except it wasn't like any other, because Lena felt it before she saw it, that feeling in the pit of her stomach, the kind that told her something was coming. She had been in the library, flipping through an old novel she wasn't really reading, trying to pretend her world hadn't just been turned upside down, trying to forget the way Damian had looked at her last night, dark, unreadable, possessive, trying to ignore the way she had felt when he told her about Celeste and Victor's burials. Because no matter how much she wanted to despise him, something in her ached for him, and she hated herself for it. Then the silence shattered. Raised voices echoed through the grand halls of the estate. A voice she didn't recognize, sharp and feminine, laced with something venomous. And then Damian's dangerous. Lena's heart stopped. She didn't think, she moved. When she reached the foyer, she saw them. Damian stood like a storm, barely contained, his body tense, his face carved from stone. And across from him, in a red dress that screamed trouble, was Celeste Vaughn. She was beautiful, too beautiful. The kind of woman who looked like she belonged in Damian Wolfe's world. And the way she was looking at him like she still belonged to him. Lena's breath caught, but she forced herself to step forward. Celeste's eyes flickered to her, and in that moment, Lena felt the weight of something unspoken. A battle already beginning, a game she hadn't even realized she was playing. Celeste smirked. Well, I guess congratulations are in order. Her voice was silk and thorns. Damian didn't react. He hadn't even looked at Lena, and that stung. Lena straightened, lifting her chin. You must be Celeste. Celeste's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. And you must be temporary. The words hit like a slap, but Lena refused to flinch. She had survived too much to cower now. Damian finally turned to her, his gaze dark, assessing, like he was waiting to see how she would react. She met his eyes, held them, and then she smiled, because, if Celeste thought she could rattle her, she had another thing coming. Lena stepped closer, pressing her palm against Damian's chest. His body tensed, but he didn't push her away. Temporary, Lena mused, tilting her head. Funny, That's not what he told me last night. Celeste's eyes flickered just for a second, but Lena saw it. Damian's hand found her waist, his grip firm, a warning, a reassurance. She didn't know, but she leaned into it anyway. Celeste let out a soft laugh. Cute. Then she turned her gaze back to Damian. But you and I both know this isn't real. Lena felt Damian's fingers twitch against her waist, like he was holding something back. He exhaled sharply. What do you want, Celeste? Celeste sighed dramatically, running a hand through her perfect waves. Can't I just visit an old friend? Damian's jaw ticked. You're not my friend. Her eyes darkened. I was once. Silence, a charged, unbearable silence. Lena should have left, should have walked away, but she couldn't. Because even though she knew Damian Wolfe wasn't hers, the thought of Celeste getting back into his head, into his heart, made her chest tighten. Celeste sighed, her playful mask slipping just a fraction. I made a mistake, Damie. His body went rigid, and for the first time since she had arrived, Lena felt something shift, something dangerous. Celeste took a step closer. I shouldn't have left you. Lena's fingers curled against Damian's shirt, gripping the fabric before she could stop herself. Celeste's gaze flicked down, noted it, then smirked. Lena hated her. God, she hated her. Damian exhaled sharply, his hand leaving Lena's waist as he took a step forward toward Celeste. Lena felt the absence, like a punch to the gut. Celeste reached out, fingers brushing his sleeve. You and I both know we had something real. Lena swallowed hard. Damian's voice was ice. You had a choice, Celeste. Her eyes softened. I chose wrong. Something in Damian's expression flickered, and that was enough to make Lena's blood run cold, because he still felt something. Maybe it was hate, maybe it was anger, but maybe it wasn't. Lena took a breath. Seems like you should have thought of that before you ran off with Victor Langston. Celeste's eyes snapped to her, and for the first time the mask cracked. Damian, however, didn't react, which meant one thing: he wasn't done with Celeste. Lena's stomach twisted. What the hell was she doing falling for a man who didn't belong to her, a man who might never belong to her? Celeste let out a slow exhale. We all make mistakes, don't we? She looked at Damian when she said it, and this time he didn't look away. Lena's chest ached. Celeste turned back to her, smile cold. It was lovely meeting you, darling. Lena forced a smirk. Can't say the same. Celeste chuckled. Oh, I like you. And she turned and walked away, leaving behind a silence more deafening than any scream. Lena watched as Damian's gaze followed Celeste's retreating figure, and in that moment, she knew she was losing. She exhaled, turning away, but before she could take a single step, Damian's hand caught her wrist. She froze. Slowly, she looked up, met his gaze. His grip was tight, unyielding. He didn't speak, didn't move, just held her there, and for the first time, Lena didn't know if she wanted to fight it. Chapter 7. Lena woke up to chaos. At first, she didn't realize what was happening. The world outside the penthouse was still quiet, the city bathed in the soft glow of early morning. But something was wrong. She felt it before she saw it. Her phone was vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. Missed calls. Dozens of them, messages flooding in faster than she could read. Then a notification, a headline. Exposed, Damian Wolfe's fake marriage scandal. Lena's stomach dropped. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she clicked on the article, her hands trembling. There it was, everything, the contract, the terms, the money, her name, his name, splashed across every tabloid and news site. Her breath caught in her throat. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. But it was. And then the pictures. Damian and Lena at events. Their interactions dissected, like they were nothing more than a performance, a carefully orchestrated lie. The world had decided. Lena was a gold digger, a woman who had sold herself for a year-long arrangement with one of the most powerful men in the country, and Damian, a ruthless billionaire who manipulated women like chess pieces. Lena felt like she was going to be sick. Her mind raced. How did this get out? Only a handful of people knew the truth. Damian, his lawyers, her, and then realization hit her like a freight train. Celeste. Lena's fingers clenched around the phone as bile rose in her throat. It had to be. That snake had waltzed back into Damian's life, smirked at Lena like she already knew something she didn't. And now this. A knock at the bedroom door made her jump. She turned as Damian walked in, phone in hand, his face unreadable, too calm, like he had seen this coming. Her stomach twisted. Did you know? His expression didn't change. No. Are you sure? The words came out sharp, accusing, because she didn't know what to believe anymore. Damian took a slow breath. Lena, no, she snapped, her voice shaking. You told me no one would find out. You said this would stay between us. I didn't leak it. His voice was steady, controlled, but there was something else beneath it. Something dangerous. Lena let out a bitter laugh. Well, someone did, and now the entire world thinks I'm a... Her throat closed around the word. Damian's jaw clenched. I'll fix this. She let out a shaky breath, pushing past him. I need air. Lena. But she was already gone. The fallout. By the time she stepped outside, the damage had already spread like wildfire. Paparazzi swarmed the building. Cameras, microphones, flashing lights, questions being screamed into the air. Lena, did you marry Damian Wolfe for money? Is this contract real? How much did he pay you? Lena's vision blurred. This was a nightmare. She turned back toward the entrance, but Damian's security team was already there, pushing reporters back. Miss Carter, this way, one of the guards said, ushering her toward a waiting car. She felt like a prisoner as the doors shut behind her. She forced herself to breathe, to think. The news had only been out for hours, and yet it had already destroyed whatever illusion of normalcy she had. Her inbox was flooded with messages. Family, friends, strangers. Some were concerned. Most were cruel. And then her mother. Lena hesitated before opening the text. Mom, is it true? She swallowed hard, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. But what was she supposed to say? That it had started as a lie but somehow turned into something she didn't understand. That somewhere along the way she had started to feel something real. She shut off her phone. She couldn't do this.
The confrontation.
When she returned to the penthouse, Damian was waiting. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up. He looked like a man who had been fighting a war all morning. Lena didn't care. She stormed toward him, her emotions boiling over. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she hissed. Damian's gaze was dark. We'll find out who leaked it. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Oh, we already know who leaked it. Damian didn't move, didn't blink. Celeste. She spat the name. She walked in here days ago like she owned you. And now this. Something flickered in his expression. But he said nothing. And that made her snap. Oh my God. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You still care about her, don't you? Damian's jaw tightened. Lena, no. She cut him off, her chest aching. You still love her, don't you? His silence was deafening. Lena's heart shattered. You used me. Her voice was hollow now. I was nothing more than a game to you. A pawn in your war against Victor. A placeholder for the woman you really wanted. Damian's entire body went rigid, but she wasn't done. She stepped closer, staring up at him, refusing to let the tears fall. Tell me I'm wrong. Damian's lips parted, but no words came out. And that was her answer. Lena inhaled sharply, nodded, and then she walked away, because there was nothing left to say. The truth behind the betrayal. Lena was halfway out the door when Damian's voice stopped her cold. It wasn't Celeste. She froze. His words sliced through the silence like a blade. Slowly she turned. What? Damian exhaled, his expression unreadable. Celeste didn't leak the contract? Lena's brows furrowed. Then who did? He hesitated. And for the first time she saw something rare in his eyes, regret. His voice was low. Your sister? The world tilted? Lena's breath caught. No, that's not. But Damian didn't waver. Angela sold the story. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. That's not possible. Damian's gaze was unforgiving. She needed money. Victor gave it to her. Lena's world shattered. She staggered back, her mind racing. No, she wouldn't. But she knew. She knew Angela had always been reckless, desperate, and Victor, he would have paid handsomely to watch Damian burn. Lena's hands trembled. This wasn't just betrayal. This was destruction. And she had no idea how to survive. Chapter 8. Lena's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step heavier than the last. She wasn't running. She refused to run, but she was leaving. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. But she didn't let herself cry. Not yet. Not here. Damian had watched her go. He hadn't stopped her, and that was what hurt the most. She stepped into the elevator, pressing the button with a force that belied her shaking fingers. As the doors slid shut, she exhaled, pressing a hand against her stomach as nausea threatened to consume her. Angela, her own sister, her own flesh and blood, had sold her out. Lena felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Who could she trust? Who had she ever been able to trust? The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and immediately the flash of cameras greeted her like a tidal wave. Lena, over here. How long have you been lying to the public? Is this marriage a complete fraud? She ignored them, her face impassive, and walked straight toward the black car waiting for her. The driver opened the door and she slid inside, barely able to breathe. Where to, Miss Carter? For the first time in days, she had no answer. Where could she go? She had no home, no job, no reputation, everything gone. But as the car pulled away, something inside her hardened. Fine. Let them think what they wanted. She had survived worse, and she would survive this too. Damian's dilemma. Damian stood by the penthouse window, his hands clenched at his sides. He had let her go. He could have stopped her, but he hadn't. Not because he didn't want to. God, he wanted to. But because for the first time in his life, he didn't know what the right move was. He had built an empire on control, on strategy. He had always been 10 steps ahead of his enemies, but this was chaos. He had thought he could control it, control her, but Lena wasn't something to be controlled. And now she was gone. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Victor's voice was smug. Bad day, brother. Damian turned slowly, his expression dark. Get out. Victor laughed, stepping inside. What? No warm welcome? Damian's jaw tightened. You leaked the contract. Victor smirked. Guilty. Damian's hands curled into fists. He wanted to rip him apart. But Victor wasn't done. Oh, but I'm not the only one you should be angry at. His smirk widened. You should really ask Lena about our connection. Damian's blood ran cold. What the hell are you talking about? Victor leaned in, his voice dripping with amusement. Oh, Damian, didn't she tell you? She's one of us. The dark secret. Lena sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. She hadn't slept. Her phone had rung all night, calls, messages, but she hadn't answered any of them. Because she knew, Damian knew. Victor had made sure of it. And now there was no escaping it. Her past had finally caught up to her. She heard the knock before she saw the shadow outside her door. She knew who it was before she even opened it. Damian stood there, his eyes dark and unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. How long? His voice was quiet, too quiet. Lena's fingers curled into her sleeves. Damian, how long have you been lying to me? She exhaled, her chest tightening. I didn't lie to you. His laugh was bitter. No? Then tell me, did you know who Victor was before you met me? She didn't answer, because the truth was written all over her face. Damian stepped closer, his voice sharp. Answer me. Lena's throat felt tight. Yes. The word hung between them. Damian's fists clenched at his sides. So this was the plan all along? Get close to me. Get information. Lena's eyes widened. No, that's not. Then what, Lena? He was furious now, betrayed. Were you playing me from the start? Tears burned her eyes. I didn't play you, Damian. Then tell me the truth, he demanded. All of it. Lena swallowed hard. She had spent years running from this. but there was nowhere left to run. So she told him the truth. My mother, her voice cracked. She married Victor's father after my dad left us. I was young. I didn't know what kind of man he was. Damian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He controlled everything. He controlled Victor. And when I got older, he tried to control me too. Damian's fists clenched. Did he hurt you? Lena hesitated. She could still feel the weight of those nights, the way she had learned to be small in his presence. He tried, she whispered, but I left before he could. Damian exhaled, his rage barely contained. Lena looked up at him, her voice shaking. Victor hates you, Damian. He always has. And when I saw you that first night, I knew exactly who you were. But I swear, I never meant for this to happen. Damian was silent. She forced herself to go on. I should have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I knew. She let out a bitter laugh. I knew you'd never look at me the same way. Damian's eyes darkened. So you let me fall for a lie. Lena's heart clenched. No, she whispered. Damian shook his head, stepping back like he couldn't stand to be near her. Lena's voice cracked. Please, just... No. He cut her off. Her stomach twisted. He had never looked at her like this before. Cold, like she was nothing. Like she had never meant anything. Damian exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I need time, he said finally, his voice hollow. Lena's breath caught, because she knew what that meant. Time meant distance, meant the end. She could feel her heart breaking all over again, but this time she wasn't sure she could survive. Chapter 9. Damian sat in the dim glow of his office, his fingers pressed against his temples, his mind a battlefield of rage, regret, and realization. The truth was right in front of him. Lena hadn't known. Not really. Victor had spun a perfect web of deceit, and like a fool, Damian had walked straight into it, blinded by his need for control and by years of hatred that had burned through his veins like gasoline. He had spent so much time planning for betrayal that when it finally arrived, he never stopped to question who the real enemy was. Now he had pushed Lena away again, and this time, he might not get her back. Damian exhaled sharply, grabbing his phone. He would fix this. He had to. But before he could dial her number, his office door burst open. Ethan, his most trusted security lead, stood there, his face pale. Sir, it's Lena. Damian's grip tightened on the phone. Something was wrong. What about her? His voice was dangerously low. Ethan swallowed hard. She's in danger. The world around him stopped. A chill ran through his spine. Then fire, pure fire, rushed through his veins. What happened? We tracked her location. She's been followed all day. And an hour ago, we lost her signal. Damian shot to his feet. His voice was deathly quiet. Ethan nodded grimly. It's Victor. Damian's heart slammed against his ribs. He was done playing games. Find her, he ordered, his voice razor sharp. Lena's nightmare. Lena's wrists burned as she struggled against the ropes, digging into her skin. The dimly lit warehouse reek of oil and dust, and the sound of her own shaky breathing filled her ears. Her body ached. She had been driving back to the only place she felt safe, her friend Sarah's apartment, when a black SUV had cut her off. The next thing she knew, arms had grabbed her, shoving her into the back of a van. A hood pulled over her head. Now she was here, and she wasn't alone. Victor stood a few feet away, watching her like a cat toying with a mouse. He smiled, comfortable, almost amused. Lena's voice was hoarse but sharp. Go to hell, he chuckled. Feisty. I see why Damian likes you. His eyes darkened, though. I wonder if he still does, now that he knows the truth. Lena swallowed hard, but didn't let him see her fear. Victor crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Lena recoiled, her skin crawling. His smile widened. Don't worry, sweetheart. I have no interest in you that way. His fingers gripped her chin hard, forcing her to look at him. You're just a pawn, and the best way to hurt Damian is to take away the one thing he actually cares about. Her stomach twisted. Damian wouldn't come for her. He had made that clear, hadn't he? But before she could speak, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse, gunfire, yelling, and then Damian's breaking point. The moment Damian saw Lena, bruised, tied, helpless, something inside him snapped. Victor had taken her, tried to use her, and Damian was done. The warehouse erupted into chaos as his men stormed in. Guns drawn, Victor stepped back, his hands raised, smirking. "Ah, Big Brother finally arrives." Damian's voice was lethal. "Let her go." Victor clicked his tongue. "You never did have patience, did you?" He pulled a knife from his pocket, pressing it to Lena's throat. Damian's world froze. His pulse pounded. Everything narrowed to that single moment. "Put it down," Damian ordered, his voice calm, deadly calm. Victor's grin widened. "Or what?" Damian didn't hesitate. He fired. The bullet tore through Victor's shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. The knife clattered, and Damian moved fast. His hands were on Lena's ropes in seconds. Freeing her, she collapsed into him, her breath ragged, her body trembling. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not revenge, not power, not even the years of hatred between him and Victor. Only her. "I've got you," Damian whispered against her hair, his arms wrapping around her like steel. He would never let go again. Love no longer a choice. Hours later, Lena sat in Damian's penthouse, wrapped in one of his oversized sweaters, a blanket draped around her shoulders. She hadn't spoken much since they left the warehouse. Damian had barely let her go, his jaw tight, his hand never leaving hers. But now, as he sat across from her, she finally met his gaze. "Why did you come for me?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Damian inhaled, his fingers tightening around hers. "Because," he said, his voice raw. "I love you." Lena's breath caught. His eyes burned into hers. No games, no power struggles, just truth. "I love you, Lena, and I'm sorry for everything. For doubting you, for pushing you away, for letting you think, even for a second, that you weren't the most important thing in my life." His voice cracked. "I almost lost you today, and I won't make that mistake again." Tears filled her eyes. "Damian," he cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "I almost lost you. I won't let that happen again." Lena's heart pounded, because for the first time, she saw it. Not just the man who had built walls around himself, but the man who was willing to tear them down for her. She swallowed, placing a hand over his. "I love you too," she whispered. Damian exhaled, his forehead pressing against hers. There was no turning back now. Love wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only choice. Chapter. The weight of the past year hung in the air like an unspoken truth between them. Damian stood across the room, the contract in his hands, the same contract that had bound them together, that had dictated the terms of their relationship, that had controlled everything between them from the very beginning. But not anymore. Lena's breath hitched as she watched him, her heart pounding in her chest. She should walk away. She should. But something in Damian's eyes kept her frozen in place. Desperation, regret. It was the first time she had ever seen him this raw. No power, no control, just a man standing on the edge, ready to fall, and she was the only one who could catch him. Damian exhaled, his fingers tightening around the paper. This ruined everything," he said, his voice low but sharp. "This contract, this deal. I thought it would protect me. I thought it would keep things in order." His jaw clenched, but all it did was push you away. Lena swallowed hard, her hands curling into fists at her sides. "And now?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He met her gaze, dark and unshaken. "Now, I break the terms." Without another word, Damian ripped the contract in half. Lena gasped, watching as the torn pieces fluttered to the floor. The weight of it, their arrangement, their bargain, disintegrated right in front of her. "This was never about a deal," Damian said, stepping closer, his voice rough, raw, real. "Not for me, not anymore." She let out a shaky breath. "And yet you let me believe it was." Regret flashed across his face. I know, and I hate myself for it, but I was scared, Lena. Scared of losing control. Scared of needing you. Scared of... He stopped, inhaling sharply. Loving you. The words hit her like a force of nature. Loving you. Her heart clenched. And what changed? His lips curved into the faintest, saddest smile. I did. His fingers trembled as he reached for her. But he didn't touch her. Not yet. You changed me, Lena. Every damn day. You tore down my walls. You made me feel things I swore I never would. And I kept fighting it. Because love makes you weak, right? He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. But I was wrong. Not loving you is what made me weak. Lena's eyes burned with unshed tears. He was bearing himself to her. No contracts, no terms, no conditions. Just him. But could she trust it? Trust him? Her voice was barely above a whisper. And what about everything else? Your power, your empire, your revenge. Damian took another step forward, closing the distance between them, until she could feel his warmth. I don't care, he said, his voice steady, unbreakable. None of it means anything without you. Her breath caught. This was Damian Wolfe, the billionaire, who had spent his entire life chasing control, dominating everything in his path. And he was choosing her over everything. Her throat tightened. You can't just give up everything for me. His hand finally found hers, fingers lacing together like they were always meant to be. I already have. Lena's chest rose and fell unevenly, the emotions swirling inside her, tangled and messy, her heart and mind at war. She had spent so long protecting herself from him. But love didn't follow the rules, never had. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, "You broke my heart, Damian." His grip on her tightened. "And I will spend every day of my life making it whole again." Lena let out a shaky laugh, fresh tears falling. "That's not how it works." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "Then tell me how," he murmured. "Tell me how to fix it." She stared at him, searching, trembling. Then finally, she said the one thing that had haunted her for so long. "I don't want to be a choice." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to be something you regret later." His gaze turned fierce, unwavering. "You're not a choice, Lena. You're the only choice." And then he kissed her. A kiss that wasn't about control or possession, wasn't about power or dominance. It was a kiss of surrender, of love, of everything. And this time, Lena didn't fight it. She didn't run. She let herself fall. 1 year later, the sun dipped low over the city skyline as Lena walked through the gallery, her fingers brushing against the paintings that now filled the space. Her gallery, her dream, and hers alone. It had taken time, time to heal, time to grow, time to trust again. But every single day, Damian had kept his promise. He had shown her in 1,000 little ways that love wasn't just about grand gestures or whispered words. It was in the way he held her at night, in the way he let her chase her own dreams without hesitation, in the way he had let go of his past to build a future with her. She turned, her heart skipping as she saw him standing in the doorway. Damian Wolfe, still powerful, still dangerous, but now hers. And as he crossed the room, pulling her into his arms, she knew the contract had ended, but their story was just beginning. Because when a billionaire truly craves you, love never follows the rules.
If you enjoyed this Billionaire romance audiobook, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exciting new story. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.